Makes plenty of sense. And then other than the explosion of the money supply and this growth of inflation, are there any other, and also the growth in the population, global population, and in the United States, are there any other major trends that would make it very important or imperative even to begin investing in land right now?
Well, yes. I mean, let's take a look at that example I gave of foreign businesses, entities, and governments, actual governments, buying United States real assets, land. You know, the French own the parking meters in Denver.
Okay.
There's a number of Mideast countries that own toll roads throughout the United States. There's a number of African and Mideast countries, dictators, and governments who are buying farmland throughout the Midwest. You know, they can see the writing on the wall. And if you couple what's happening with the growth in M2, with the increase in population, with the increase in demand for finite resources such as energy, food, etc., and water. I think water is the oil of several decades from now. Then you have a huge underpinning. But on top of that, you have the fiscal policies of the United States. Now, despite horrible fiscal policies, this is still one of the safest places to invest in the world. You know, money likes to seek safe haven. So if people have a chance to invest in, let's say, land in Africa, which is in a tribal region controlled by competing dictators, or they have an opportunity to invest in land in a relatively stable democracy, such as the United States, where is that money going to flow? It's going to flow to the safest haven.
Right.
That's one of the things that's fueling demand for U.S. and Canadian real estate. The other thing which is very important is that the poor fiscal policies of the United States, basically over the last 50 to 70 years, but on steroids over the last 3, are creating a situation where debt is going to force a further devaluation of the dollar.
So you think
the valuation of the dollar is also, quote unquote, inflation. Once again, bad fiscal policy will actually be fueling an increase in the amount of dollars it takes to buy a piece of land.
Right. So do you foresee printing as a method to take down the debt?
Well, do I foresee it? I foresee it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I mean, that is the bent of Keynesian economists who have been proven wrong for the last 100 years.
Right.
And it seems to be the failed policy of the current administration and you know, the Federal Reserve, both of which are running amok, are with the future of this country and the future of our children's children, and it's inexcusable.
And considering these unsustainable fiscal policies, I mean, how long does the United States really remain this safe haven?
Well, you remember, a safe haven is a relative term. So despite, shall we say, the erosion of the United States as a bastion of economic power and stability, it would have to erode at an exponential rate for it to become less safe than, let's say, Zimbabwe.
Right.
Or for that matter, right now, Greece. I mean, who would buy a piece of land in Greece?
Right.
Nobody. So everything is always relative. The United States can be struggling in many respects, but if everybody else is struggling more, you're still the safest haven.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing to say. It's a which is less negative thought rather than which is more positive thought. But nonetheless, it's economic reality.
Right. And I mean, are you seeing a lot of boomers coming into the land market? Are they really catching on to this wave? I remember you were saying that a lot of the people in the upper echelon, maybe the upper middle class, are beginning to invest in land and have been investing in land. Are you seeing this trend increasing?
Yes, the trend is definitely increasing. Right now there's about 28 million, give or take, landowners in the United States. And there are about 5.6 million estimated wannabe landowners. And of those, more than half are, shall we say, folks of middle-class means. Okay? And by middle class, I mean, given in this age, middle class is, you know, anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 household income to $200,000 household income. I laugh when our president stands up there and says, we're going to tax the wealthy. You know, if you make over $200,000, I mean, what planet is he from? $200,000 gets you nowhere in today's economy. But we see a lot of folks looking for their dream. You know, part of land is spiritual, and part of land is financial, i.e., land for love and for money.
Right.
And the spiritual part of land is something that is ingrained into the human psyche. You know, even the apartment dwellers in New York who go, well, I don't have any vested interest in land. I live in an apartment. I'm on the 40th story. You know what? If they look out their window, they look down that long concrete wall to where it disappears in the sidewalk. Underneath that sidewalk is a foundation, and you know what it sits on? It sits on land. Everybody has an interest in land. Everybody is associated with land. And what we see right now are many folks of relatively modest means in today's economy looking for their slice of the land pie. And it could be a small acreage, you know. It could be a third of an acre in an exurban setting that they want to build a house on. It could be, as I gave the example, 1 acre on the shores of Lake Michigan for their cabin. Many of these people are fueled maybe less by investment, although in the back of their minds they know that's part of it. But they're also fueled by the fact that lifestyles are changing. This great recession that we are weathering right now has given people, it's been obviously a bane to many, but it's also an opportunity to change your lifestyle, particularly with technology and communications. You know, my businesses are run from remote ranches, and when I say remote, I mean some of them are 17 miles from power, and I can be in communication with the entire world. Now, that was not possible 10 years ago. So the chance to start your own business and still live someplace relatively wild and remote is an opportunity which mankind has never really had before, and people are taking advantage of it. Again, people, 60 years ago, this was primarily an agrarian society, just 60 years ago. And people tend to go back to their roots as they age, and what we're seeing is a lot of the baby boomers growing up in agrarian and rural communities are now looking to leave urban environments and go back to their roots. So there's a lot of demographic, there's a lot of technological, and there's a lot of economic impetus behind this newly acquired and growing interest in land, which, of course, the last time you saw it, ironically, was after Jimmy Carter's stint. One of the greatest land markets that the United States has ever seen was in the period from about 1980 to about 1988. And the instability and opportunity, it's a yin-yang thing that his policies created and which the current administration's policies are again creating, however, on steroids, is again fueling that mindset on where do I put my money on something that I can touch, something that can provide me security, something that if I really have to, if there's social unrest or services breakdown, I can go to and be safe as a safe haven, and at the same time enjoy as a lifestyle thing.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about because I consider myself, I definitely have some survivalist tendencies, and I do have this idea in the back of my mind that at some point it could get pretty hectic in the United States as far as social unrest and civil unrest. And I hadn't really thought of the possibility of having land, your own land in the United States and just using that as more of a safe haven. I was actually thinking more of just having a base outside of the U.S.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not sure where you'd go outside the U.S., which is safer than the U.S., even in its worst state, other than perhaps Canada. We find a lot of people, and, they can't quite voice it. It's really interesting to talk to folks. But, they talk about, well, I want a safe place. Well, I want a secure place for my kids. And what they're really saying is, listen, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, I want a place to go where I can feel safe, where I can live, where I can grow food, where I can be pretty much independent of the fracas which may be occurring in the urban areas.
Right.
So the whole thing, if you take the psychological, the emotional, the ingrained magnetism of land to the human spirit, the nuts and bolts of land being the source of everything. You know, it is the source and the root of everything we do, everything we breathe, everything we drink, the fuel we put in our cars, you name it. And you start combining those into one ball of thought, and you can see why land is beginning to, again, appeal to many, many, many people other than folks that you would normally think of as land buyers, i.e., people who go out and buy 1,000 acres here, there, or everywhere.
Yeah.
We've seen an uptick in the interest in various ranches and stuff out west. We've seen about a 500% uptick in interest since this time last year. I mean, it's really startling. You know, whether or not that interest translates to actual transactions, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other things that underlie that, including the daily news. But the interest is certainly climbing exponentially.
Mm-hmm.